It's been a year.
Slava Ukraini!
How it feels like. Imagine yourself inside of a Groundhog Day, where heaviest mental exhaustion, lack of sleep, financial issues, and news about people you know dying are all gathered together, repeating daily for a year straight. Now the factors themselves. No one and nowhere is safe. Personally, for me, being inside an actual war zone like tank fights and artillery duels, few kilometers from my house, diversion groups being eliminated and such, lasted only a month and a bit, till Kiev Oblast was fully liberated in first days of April 2022. Though Russian cruise and ballistic missiles, as well as kamikaze drones, can reach any corner of Ukraine, and with almost 98% of all their missile attacks targeting nothing but civilian objects, none is truly safe, be it Kharkiv, Kiev, or Lviv. Where we live, for instance, sounds and flashes from air defense work, huge light beams searching for drones in the night sky, and explosions is something we experienced almost daily before and still experiencing weekly. Any Ukrainian in any corner of the country can simply go to bed and never wake up again. I think that's one of the obscure yet scary fears, to accept the fact you can simply die in your sleep without even knowing that. For me, and I'm sure for many others, there is long ago no fear in usual meaning, but this uncertainty of the life itself, the realization you have no control over your life expectancy at all, is constantly poisoning you. The death and ruination reminding of themselves every hour. When a genocide and destruction of such unimaginable scale comes to your country, everything becomes closer for two reasons. First of all, you feel the pain and loss of even random people much stronger, because you know that they are either in the same position as you or often much worse. Secondly, because of the sheer number of attacks, you recognize just too many places in the news. The bars, shopping malls, and clinics you was visiting, university you studied at, well-known factories or cultural monuments, apartments of the people you know, and even just such random places like the train stations or parts of the streets you walked just once or twice in your whole life in many different cities. During this year, Russia performed more than 5,000 missile, 3,500 plane, and almost 1,000 drone attacks, and basically no city of a decent size remained undamaged. Some cities Russia captured, like Mariupol, are literally leveled to zero, and some others, like Kharkiv, where invaders were defeated but caused a huge ruination, have thousands of buildings, whole city districts destroyed. And seeing more and more deaths and ruination literally every day feels like the whole image of your very life is being torn apart, hanging there badly burned just in some duct tape pieces. Being afraid to call your friends and relatives because you just don't know if they will ever respond. Not because they are busy, but simply because any day, any hour, and next minute, any of them can just cease to exist. To call your family when you see yet another post about explosions in Kharkiv and listening to your own heartbeat sounding like a drums, when a few seconds last like hour while you're waiting on a line and just hope they will pick up the phone. Writing to your friends who were not appearing online in messengers for a few days and hoping they will reply back not just soon but rather at all. It turns your previously casual weekday activities into a constant stress and fear. The ignorance. Most of the civilized world stands with us, and that's one of the major reasons Ukraine is winning against an enemy that has tenfold of military resources. The feeling of global moral support is what helps us to still keep our sanity. At the same time as Russia spent dozens of billions into propaganda to brainwash whole world, there is also a huge amount of people who see Ukraine through their Russian lies prism, or, well, just dumb people who, of course, will never realize they're such. Through the course of this war, I learned to abstract myself from all the hate I see online, but it's simply not possible to do on 100% exactly because of the contrast of the emotions you have while living right here. The comments that call this war and genocide a fake one, while every hour I'm seeing reports of photos with ruined houses, raped girls, castrated and hanged men, and slaughtered children. The advices from basement military experts who are playing Dota with one hand and writing to you how actually Ukrainians should fight near Bakhmut, while I see reports and photos of our fallen heroes every hour. The dead-beaten scary tale about Azov Nazi regiment and Ukraine being controlled by some kind of neo-Nazi warmongers from ignorant idiots who don't even bother to check the facts, while, as for today, the whole world, basically lots of major countries on the state level, apologize to Ukraine for repeating their Russian propaganda for years. The calls to stop sending weapons to Ukraine for sake of peace, from the kind of people who will not even stand up for their own girlfriend in a street conflict. The fact I'm a content maker and a public person of some sort only makes it worse as I'm reading hundreds of such comments monthly. All this simply makes your blood boil twice. First time because of the initial emotions, and then because of the anger you feel when realizing that is, if a collective world would actively fight Russian propaganda instead of ignoring it in exchange for cheap gas, this level of hate would be far not as insane as it is now. Messed up sleep schedule. Russian missiles do not care about working hours, weekends, and sleeping hours. The terror bombing continues regularly and randomly, and even now, air raid sirens are howling daily even in cities that are not directly at the front lines. I'm a person to whom the sleep schedule is incredibly important. I need to sleep at least 9 hours a day in one fell swoop. And the air raid doesn't care if it's like 3 a.m. The siren wakes you up, and yet again, with a crazy heartbeat and red eyes, you have just up to 1 minute to wake up, get dressed, and run down the stairs. Often, because of the stress, you are just not able to fall asleep when you're returning to the bed, and you are just lying and rolling over for hours till the sunrise. Another reason are the blackouts caused by Russian attacks on our energy grid. When you do not have electricity for half a day, every day, you don't have much choice when to work and do the house chores. Electricity can be off for most of the day and then just appear at 2 a.m. and so you get up and get to the work while you should be sleeping right now. Today, this exact situation is better, but for a few months before, it has completely ruined my sleep schedule too. The never-ending feeling of guilt. That's something everyone feels here no matter of their work and status. When the whole nation feels each other's pain and struggle like own family, it constantly results in a feeling like you are not doing enough, no matter what. Soldiers are being sorry for civilians they are winning the war not fast enough. Commanders feeling guilt they saved less soldiers' lives during an assault than they could have. Volunteers feel guilt because they think they could raise more money to help the country. Civilians feeling guilt because they want to donate more to their defenders or other civilians in need, even if they are donating their last money instead of going to doctor or buy something they actually need for themselves. It also gives even bigger strain on the people who are initially empathic, like myself. Moreover, because of the regular posts about situation in Ukraine I'm doing this whole year without breaks, I just have to scroll down through all the news, videos, and posts, no matter their content, which leaves me empty inside sometimes, not even by the evening, but in just couple of hours already in the morning. The consequences: mental, physical, and the work impact. PTSD and OCD. I have a mild OCD condition. It was not noticed by doctors back at my childhood days because such kind of diagnosis simply didn't even exist in a post-USSR medicine of mid-90s of 20th century. So I just had to learn to live with it. OCD shows up in different forms, but you most likely saw it at least once in a movie or TV series when a person is obsessively washing their hands for hours. For me, it appears as an itch to click like that. My hands and leg joints, and in bad cases, I can do it for hours quite literally till my joints go numb. Normally, I learn to track this and begin to talk to myself to find out the reason of this and solve it to prevent the obsessive actions from happening. But due to the accumulated stress now, such occasions became much more frequent and harder to tame. PTSD. Unlike many people think, you don't have to be on the battlefield to get a PTSD from the war. Clearly, soldiers and anyone being present at the battlefield itself are affected the most. But actually, any person who suffered a continued stress during the war can and most likely will develop the PTSD syndromes. Up to the most optimistic prognosis, around 10 million of Ukrainians will have to fight the PTSD after the war. That's basically a quarter of our entire population. For me, PTSD in somewhat light form triggers at certain loud sounds which are not even related to the actual explosions, but they still stress the hell out of me, making me twitch in fear or just destroy my mood for a few hours long. For instance, during the snow period of winter, the snow was often falling down from the roof of our house. The sound is pretty loud, and I sometimes was twitching up to like 40 or even 50 times per evening subconsciously, being afraid of the missile explosion, while of course, logically my brain knows that it's just the snow. The anxiety. I had a talk with a therapist a couple times and gladly was not diagnosed with a clinical depression. At the same time, anxiety became a constant companion of both me and my girlfriend. Most noticeably, the days itself doesn't even has to be bad to begin with. We don't have to read some kind of terrible news. It just comes and goes, but way too often that it should in normal life. Approximately every third day for me now is that, so when I wake up at morning, I have no will to do anything pretty much. Eat, train, watch anime, work, nothing. I just want so this day would end to somehow fall asleep again and so next day would begin probably and somehow a new day would be better for me. The mental blocks. Surely it's your brain self-defense mechanism to protect your sanity from being wrecked. But as soon as you realize that, it becomes another problem you cannot forget about anymore. I, at some point somewhere in spring of 2022, have completely lost the ability to cry, no matter what kind of terrible and sad news I would see. I simply was not able to cry, physically shed tears, which was even more worrying to me as I am really empathic and emotional person that cries at least few times a week, experiencing both sad and happy emotions even when watching movies or anime and such. Few months later, already in autumn, I suddenly began to cry so often and so hard that I became afraid of that once again, probably compensating every tear I haven't shed before. The physique. I was unhealthily skinny some times ago, having weight of 47 kilograms at 180 centimeters height, as well as various spine issues too. Without exaggeration, healthy diet and regular trainings in a gym transformed me into a better person and drastically improved my health. I am also an ectomorph, which means it is easy for me to lose weight if needed, so I will never be like really obese. But at the other hand, it's really hard for me to gain body mass, and especially a clean muscle mass. With the amount of stress I have and generally messed up sleep schedule, it is simply not possible to keep the same level of productive trainings even if you want so. And while it may be not a big deal for most of people, for me personally, to see myself losing the amount of muscle mass I work for like 5, 6, 7 years in just a few months, it's depressing to say at least. But right now I'm getting back on the track, and with time I will be surely able to fix this. The work impact. Due to the combination of factors from purely material ones such as blackouts and simply being not able to work to the heavy anxiety waves, it's much harder for me to work at regular pace and at regular scale right now, which also stresses me even more in return because I generally have to support two families at once, and due to the war I have extra expenses on top of that. To think that I will not be able to do this if I will succumb to the anxiety or electricity will disappear for too long time in a row, it scares me on a huge level. But despite all what happened and how it impacted me, I still was able to release multiple modding guide updates and couple dozens various videos during this year, so I think it's not that bad. While it's still stressful for me, I'm totally sure I will overcome this as well. Getting used to something you should never have gotten used to. Reading news about dozens of your fellow countrymen killed by terrorist attacks daily, like it's something usual. Burials of your friends. Living for days without a shower and hot food. Sleeping for 2, 3 hours in different times of day. Air raids and explosion sounds. One of the most frightening effects of this war is that we all got used to this, used to something terrible, something abnormal that should have never happened, something we should never have experienced and never have getting used to begin with. It adds an extra layer of anxiety every time you're thinking about it. And you think about this way too often. Talking about all of this was not quite an easy task for me, but I did it to give an attention to the same situation for millions of other Ukrainians. And with all being mentioned, I'm still a really lucky person. I'm alive, I'm not injured, I'm able to work, and I'm also lucky to have a strong mental health to overcome most of stuff that I have experienced. Many other people were much less lucky. Some still live in a literal war zones. Some already buried members of their own families, their wives, husbands, and often children, or simply have a different kind of nervous system that is giving them much more traumatic experience. I want to remind you that this senseless, atrocious war still goes on. That Russian terrorists are still destroying our homes, our best people, and our mental health as well. Spread the word about it, be loud about it, until Ukraine will win this war. And yet stand with us even after that. Because even just a few kind words in internet in this situation for people who experience so much cruelty, so much evil can actually save someone's day and even someone's life. If you feel like it, you can also donate to any of Ukrainian charity foundations that I have listed in the video description. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, folks, and thank you for being with me and with Ukraine. No matter the hardships, the life and light will prevail. We will never be the same, and things will never return to how it was before, but we will overcome everything and become better. If we can do this, then everyone and you can do this too. Stay safe.